Hello, good afternoon. My name's Aid Taylor, and I am here with Amy Stokes Waters and Allie Tembo, and we are going to talk a little bit this afternoon about proactivity and specifically about using the Microsoft Sentinel platform to do some proactive threat hunting and to take a different approach to what you may have associated with proactivity in the past, just to unpick that a little bit. So before we start, can I ask both of you, starting with Amy, just to do a quick introduction of yourselves, please?
Hi everyone. I'll flip the slide so we can see everyone's name. That might be a bit easier. So my name's Amy Stokes Waters, and as it says there, I am a technical sales specialist at Identity Experts. So I work in our sales team, supporting customers who are looking at Azure Sentinel as well as other MS security products, and sort of giving them kind of an overview of how those solutions could fit in with their environment and kind of the benefits and how we can help them.
Thank you very much, Amy. And Allie, if you could just give us a few words about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Allie Tembo. I'm a cloud solution architect, and I work with partners around security and compliance. So my role is to help partners like Identity Experts and ITC Secure build solutions for our customers, so our joint customers. So I work with them to focus on everything from Azure Sentinel all the way across to compliance, anything on the Microsoft 365 platform. At all, really. So yeah, we're here today to talk about Azure Sentinel, I believe.
We are indeed. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, both of you. I suppose it might help if I sort of said a little bit about what I did apart from just my name. So I'm the CTO of ITC Secure, and we are a managed security services provider. And one of the things we do, actually, a very successful thing that we do, is a managed security service based on Microsoft Azure Sentinel, and actually on the wider Microsoft security stack as well. So just a brief couple of words about what Sentinel is, for those of you that haven't come across it. It's a SIEM, and if I sort of drag up from my dusty memory, that's security information event management, I think.
Security incident and event management, is it?
Is it incident? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if they're interchangeable, to be honest.
Well, let's say it's what we'll do is we'll just mumble that bit, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah.
But basically, it's a platform for the, as I'm sure most of you will know, for the collection and correlation of data in the form of logs and reports, alerts from pretty much any source, really. The idea being that you have one central place to collect all your information and to correlate from different areas to see if you are actually experiencing a threat. And of course, once you have all that information in one place, SIEM is also an extremely good. You're in a good position with a SIEM to trigger automation, because you bring everything in centrally. You can take actions based on those events, and it gives you a very good picture of your overall exposure to risk. Now, that all sounds great, but I'm sure we've all got experience with SIEM platforms. They've been around a long time, and like all these things, are only as good as the configuration, right? And they're only as good as the amount of interpretation they can do of the incoming data. So quite a lot of them, we've certainly found, quite a lot of SIEMs are very expensive for the actual value that the end customer gets out of it. It's a tool we rely on as a managed service provider. It's the basis, it's the center of the world effectively for our MDR services. But I think as an end user, and certainly I've been in this situation, we invest a lot of money in licensing and the costs of event per second, which is typically how these things are billed, and you quite often don't feel like, or I certainly haven't felt in the past, like you're getting the value. So we've recently, because it's only really been available recently, we've implemented our MDR service based on a managed SIEM service based on Microsoft Sentinel. And the reason we've done that is there's many reasons actually, but the two main reasons are that it's cloud-based and it's built, it's fully integrated into Microsoft security stack. So it's got a very modern, clean approach to the UI. Obviously all Microsoft data is that you could possibly ingest is extremely well integrated into the platform. There's a bit of behavioral analytics built in. It works really well with Defender ATP on the endpoint. Reporting is slick. It's a very nice modern SIEM, even if that was the only way you wanted to look at it. But if you combine that with Microsoft's full security stack and the analytics layer and the reporting and automation that we're able to do, it's an extremely powerful platform, and enabling services based on it, in our experience, has been, I mean, it's unbelievably quicker than doing it with some traditional SIEMs that we've used in the past, and you know, that realistically we will still continue to use, because there is always a use case for non-Microsoft, of course. Sorry about that, Allie. So that's Sentinel. So I was wondering, actually, Amy, if I come to you first. So I've sort of talked about how great Sentinel is a bit, and I've talked about proactivity, but how does Sentinel actually help organizations to be proactive with threat detection?
That's a very good question.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Did you come up with that one?
All on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sentinel, so it's a great product, but I think the beauty, you really can supercharge how fantastic it is when you kind of use it in conjunction with the M365 suite of technologies as well. Because then you can correlate data across multiple vectors. So if you're bringing in information from Intune, from Azure AD, from the MTP suites, that's the Microsoft Threat Protection Suite, you can help kind of discover, you can discover threats a lot more quickly. With the machine learning engine that sits in the background as well, you can then help to understand kind of what normal behavior looks like, and then highlight what isn't normal behavior, which then can then feed into kind of the automated threat response capabilities. So I think a lot of the power of the proactivity comes from that automated capacity that the solution's got. I mean, having like the single pane of glass view as well, obviously with any SIEM you get that. It gives you a more holistic view of events that are going on. So things that you might not necessarily think are related, you might, because you can see it in that single pane of glass, you've got a bit more of an ability to kind of understand what's going on in the environment, and maybe spend less time looking at multiple portals and more time doing some of that proactive stuff as well. Sure. If you've got some of your time freed up. I mean, and the cutting down of all the alerts means that, you know, when you're focusing on the kind of the important stuff as well. So I think that's, for me, that's where I think it helps you be a bit more proactive. You kind of got the data all in front of you for you to do something with. Thanks,
Amy. And is that, Allie, is that, you know, would you broadly corroborate that view? Or is, I mean, I'm fascinated really with how much kind of out of the box automation there is, which I think, you know, really helps in terms of our ability to act proactively, sensible decisions being taken automatically. But I mean, is that, do you concur with that generally?
Yeah, indeed. I think, I mean, there's only a couple of things I'd probably look to add is kind of really around the connectors as well. So, you know, being proactive across multiple different products is brilliant across a Microsoft 365 platform, but we can also do, we provide a lot of connectors out of the box for third parties, and we're consistently writing more and more of those. And if your connector that you're looking for to integrate from a third party perspective isn't there, you can also look to ingest and log using the Ceph format, so the common event format, or a syslog as well. So I think it really provides, you know, the third-party integration as well, as opposed to the Microsoft Threat Protection, which really just focuses on the Microsoft 365 platform. So one of the benefits of Sentinel, really, from an organization perspective, is that you can actually integrate the third-party logs. And then, obviously the automation around everything, as Amy mentioned before, there is so much pre-built analytics, and you can customize all your own queries using the KQL language, and start to kind of trigger and start using automated playbooks, by using logic apps. Mm-hmm. So really, there's a lot that we can start to do to be proactive.
So simply freeing up analyst time is a real contributing factor to proactivity. I think, and it sounds like what you two are both saying as well. We've got like every SOC, we've got a lot of clever people, sitting in our SOC 24 hours a day, and if the less they have to deal with routine stuff, the more they can go off threat hunting and taking proactive actions over and above what the platform can do proactively, right? It's just making better use of your people. And one of the things that you mentioned there was the integration. That feels to me like, with third parties, that feels to me like a very deliberate Microsoft thing. Now, I wouldn't have said, going back some years, I've been very pleasantly surprised at the level of support for non-Microsoft environments.
I was just going to say, Ali called me out quite well there, didn't she, as a massive Microsoft fangirl, because I always pretend that people don't have things other than Microsoft in their environment. But I think it's because I've worked with Microsoft for so long, and historically, like I think you were just about to say then, Ed, Microsoft stuff hasn't necessarily integrated that well with non-Microsoft stuff, but I think they've really flipped that on the head recently, with all these partnerships that developed over even over the last few months, so that there are those native integrators into, like you say, non-Microsoft technologies as well. Because as much as I would like to think that everyone just loves Microsoft as much as me, I'm sure other people use other things like maybe AWS or.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, we've got a connector for AWS as well into Sentinel. I think that's something that I really like. I joined Microsoft a year ago, and I really like the fact that we're not just concentrating purely on Microsoft products. I think I came from partner land as well, and one of the biggest things that we had was that not everything was one thing. It wasn't all AWS, it wasn't all Microsoft. There's always a little bit of everything, and I think, Azure Sentinel in the direction from a security perspective, the way Microsoft is going around a lot of our other products, how we're managing to kind of manage all the third-party tools. I think it makes it a lot more flexible, and in this world of cloud, it's really required. That type of thinking isn't really helpful to anybody anymore. And I think from an alert perspective, being able to use something like Azure Sentinel to join all those third-party and look at third-party alerts that are coming in and looking at the correlation across all of those different tools, from an automation perspective, and actually really just being able to present the analyst with the right information all in one go, rather than them having to threat hunt against multiple different ones across multiple different products, is really, really, really helpful. We can cut down, the amount of time it's taking to look at those alerts, and it makes a big difference, I think, because you're never going to have enough people, to deal with all of the noise that's coming in. So without the automation and correlating all those alerts using the machine learning, it's just impossible. There's not enough people in the world to be able to deal with that.
Absolutely, and I think I just think it feels to me like a very forward-thinking ethos to, when Microsoft set out to design this platform, that there was obviously an early decision made that they were going to support things like AWS from the get-go, and you're right, that's the reality, right? I mean, none of our customers are just one thing. There's a bit of Mac, there's a bit of Linux, there's on-prem, there's off-prem, there's Google Cloud, and you end up with half a dozen tools, and that's not manageable for us as a dedicated SOC. So Christ knows how customers who've got a day job to do actually manage to deal with that level of input. Okay, cool, thank you. I mean, it's interesting actually. So one of the discussion points that we've gathered from the people that signed up to this is the benefits. If we talk a little bit about the benefits of proactivity versus reactivity, and when I first read that, I thought, well, it's obvious what the benefits of proactivity versus reactivity are, but actually maybe it's, you know, it's not quite as obvious as it sounds, because for me, proactivity in SIEM world and in SOC world means threat hunting. I mean, that's kind of it, if you like. It's kind of tied up with a ribbon on it for me. But if you expand, which is great. I mean, you see a thing and you go and look for that thing, you know, in your customers' estates to see if they have been compromised. You know, you look for indicators of compromise, whatever it is, and you run some automation that looks for it. You do it manually. You know, that for me is the proactive side, and of course it can help reduce any outcome from a cyber incident, reduce the duration of an outcome, an outage from a cyber incident. But these days, reactivity isn't just an alert pops up, you wait for an analyst to notice it and do something. You know, reactivity now is at machine speed, right? It's particularly with the tools that we have now. You know, if it's something which can be automated, then reactivity can be measured in seconds rather than, you know, SLA times of hours and days anyway.
That's quite a relief with some of the threats that we have nowadays that can kind of exfiltrate through some of your systems within a matter of minutes, rather than you know, needing to wait for someone.
Yeah, so I mean, what I think is, what I think I'm sort of finally getting around saying is that, you know, it's not, we're not saying that proactivity is better than reactivity. I think I'm not anyway. What I'm saying is they're both really important, but you also need to spend a lot of time on your reactivity. Please don't see it as a kind of backwards, you know, this is how we used to do it kind of thing, because it's not that. It's about getting your tools to take action for you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of customers I do a lot of Microsoft security workshops. I mean, a lot. I think I've done about 30 of them this year. One of the questions that we always ask is whether people are proactively threat hunting within their environment, and 99.9%, whatever that works out of 30 people anyway, have all said no. No, most people are not doing, or they think they're not doing it.
I was going to ask that. Do they actually when you actually dig into it, do you find they are doing it?
I was going to say, they think they're not doing it, but then they're doing things like you've switched multi-factor authentication on. So that is a proactive step that you've taken in terms of threat remediation capabilities. So, I mean, it's not necessarily anything super sophisticated. And I hope everyone listening, I'm sure everyone who's listening to this webinar will have MFA switched on. And if you don't, naughty. But I mean, that's just kind of some of the steps that you can take to be proactive are things like just patching. Doesn't necessarily mean, like you said, like having to respond to some big attack, and hopefully people won't have to respond to a big attack because they're not going to get hit with stuff. But the way to stop yourself getting hit with things is to be proactive at stopping some, you know what I mean? So it's kind of I think it's a bit of a circle that you go around in.
Chicken and egg kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be. I think sometimes reactivity can sound like, you know, you're waiting for the threat to become an issue before you're responding to it. So in some instances, you could maybe consider it as putting you kind of on the back foot. But there's lots of things, like I said, that you can do proactively that mean that you're more secure. So yeah, things like I said, like in MFAing or making sure your patching's up to date. You know, plugging some of the gaps before someone exploits them. It's not necessarily really complex things, or having someone sat there 24/7 searching through every single alert that you ever get.
And you know, I've got to say, in every webinar, in every customer facing meeting I do, I have to say machine learning and artificial intelligence at least once. It's the law, and of course there's you know, there's a lot to be gained from being integrated into a system which has things like behavioral analytics, for example, built in effectively. You know, because behavioral analytics is no longer reliant on a box you go and buy that does BA, or you know, a bit of software you buy that does BA. If you're collecting all this information, all these security logs from all these different sources, you can, I think you mentioned it, Amy, you can establish a baseline of what normal looks like. You're in a good position to do that. And so things like geographically impossible or time impossible travel, or weird devices, you can, with a SIEM, and particularly with Sentinel, you can overlay quite a good deal of sophisticated behavioral analytics, and that's I don't know whether that's proactive or reactive. It's just good. It's a bit of both, really, isn't it? And it means you don't have to buy loads of standalone stuff and integrate it. We're in this position now. We've got all this data coming in from all these different sources, and we've got an intelligent SIEM platform with access to cloud-based machine learning grunt. Without even knowing it, really, you enable some behavioral analytics. I think things are, I don't know, it feels quite a lot like things are sort of coalescing. Security services, systems, applications are kind of all coming closer together, closer to each other, in terms of just a security offering. That's how it feels to me anyway. You're needing less boxes to do more things, is what I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm on that page.
Yeah, good. Well, that leads us on to the next point, was how are you proactive? I think we talked about that. I mean, it's there's two things to it for me. One is you have proactive services and systems in place, because you can automate quite a lot of threat hunting as well, right? You can say, here are indicators of compromise, go and find them.
I think there's an initial step. I mean, I'm sure that you were going to say something. I'm sure this was the point you were going to make. If you did.
Be that sure. Carry on.
I was going to say the initial step to being proactive really is understanding your entire estate to begin with, because unless you know what you kind of got to protect, you kind of can't be proactive with protecting it. And I think a lot of people, when they're looking at security, I mean, as an example, when I do these security workshops, I always say to customers, so we're going to be talking about bring your own device. And they're all like, oh, we don't do that. We don't do bring your own device. No, we wouldn't have that in our organisation. Then you say to them, does anyone access the email on the mobile or on their own mobile? Oh, yeah, everyone does that. Right. So that's quite a big hole in your security environment if you've not considered what else are they accessing on the personal mobile? It's not, I'm presuming it's not, most of the time it's not just your email then, is it? So I think taking that step back and really considering what you are protecting to start with is probably the first step in being proactive, because if you don't know what you're protecting, there's no you can't be proactive with it, can you?
Yeah, so I mean that's asset management effectively is what you're talking about, isn't it? I guess. Sort of.
Well, yeah, I guess asset management, or maybe just even, I don't know, just maybe talking it through with just having a chat with somebody saying, does this count?
Yeah,
Amy, I think you're dead right. I think that's really the first step, and I think a lot of people kind of miss that or go right down into the depths work before they're actually assessing kind of what they've got and where they are and where they want to be. And I think all of those things that you've talked about really do tie those together. And when you start kind of looking at things like secure score and compliance score, it really starts to bring it all together into one place now. Certainly the new secure score kind of can help you get a bit of an idea about your whole entire environment, what you've got within the Microsoft 365 cloud. And then when you start to layer that on top of Azure Sentinel, you've got you can start to do your on-prem stuff as well, and you can start to bring all of those threats into one place. But you're right, you really need to understand what you've got first. Otherwise the amount of alerts and things that you're actually going to have coming into something like Sentinel, you really need to get the basics and kind of understand where you are, where you want to go to, is kind of like a starting point.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because it kind of dovetails in with one of the things we see reasonably regularly is it's very tempting, and I think I've done this as well. It's very tempting to look at stuff like behavioral analytics and machine learning, AI driven stuff, and say, yeah, we could absolutely benefit from that. I want some of that, but actually, as an organization, there's still a load of stuff that we could better spend that budget on, like the basics that you were just talking about. Effectively, like I know it's old-fashioned, a bit out of not not that interesting anymore. But things like
I
CMDBs.
thought you were going to say on a trifle and cool and maybe break into a bit of Echo and the Bunnymen now. Highly disappointed that we didn't get a rendition.
Sorry. Yeah. That would require me remembering an Echo and the Bunnymen lyric. Yes, I mean, I think, you know, I completely agree with what you said there, actually, and you've got limited opportunities or limited places that you can spend this limited money, and starting with what have I got is an extremely good place to begin. Okay, cool. So I'm going to move on to some questions that we've collated, and I think let's start with this is really to do with operational and implementation stuff, Amy. So I'll start with you. So how do we ensure users are not disrupted when ITC, i.e., are reacting to servicing threats? And that's a fair question, actually. You know, if you say to us, give us a full managed service, run the security, protect us from risk, how do we make sure we don't touch your production business?
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, Karen.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I mean, a lot of the technologies that we use, you know, so we always recommend using the Microsoft Threat Protection Suite for a lot of this stuff, so like Office 365 ATP or MDATP, Azure ATP, etc., etc. A lot of that stuff does kind of work in the background. I mean, if you're looking at things like Azure AD Identity Protection, that's kind of all working in the background. So if someone's trying to brute force your account, but the system kind of still knows it's you trying to get in to your account, then you can continue working. So I mean, it is all about getting that balance between productivity and security. You don't want to disrupt users' productivity.
It's about knowing your customer, knowing their estate as well, isn't it? I mean, it's all about, I think managed security is all about context, actually, because a thing that happens on customer A's estate, an identical thing happens on customer B's estate, and to one person it's a high risk security breach, and to another it's not, because you know they're different. Everybody's
I spoke to someone the other day and they were like, oh, we've had another ransomware attack, and I was like, all right, that sounds pretty serious. And they're like, oh no, I've had a few of them now, we'll just deal with them. I was like, right, okay. So to them it was just like nothing and they've just dealt with it. But to
become
other people,
normal, like lockdown or it's just a thing you have to deal with.
And I think it's like you said, it's different for every customer. So I think it's about having that conversation with the customer before you kind of sign up to this kind of service, though, I guess, and understand what counts to them as disruption. What do they need from the service, and making sure that you can balance that when you're helping them react to some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, some customers say, look, if you see an indicator of compromise on a host, you take it offline straight away. That's it, no questions asked. And others say, you know, there's got to be some investigation before you do that. We want to know. We want to see some evidence. You know, we want to discuss it. It's about that closeness to the customer and being flexible. We've actually got a couple of questions in chat, so I'll take those now, actually. So AJ, thanks for asking the questions. So we have Microsoft, AWS and Google entering the SIEM market. Yeah, absolutely we do. So you've got Google Chronicle, we've got AWS, can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And yeah, event per second is financially horrendous. Absolutely, it's basically the SIEM tax. So Microsoft's gone with data usage, and Google Chronicle is on a per user basis. I like Sentinel as it opens up SIEM capabilities to O365 using SME. But will there be tiered pricing on Sentinel to Cal OPEX data changes? Is that changes or charges? I don't know. Basically, will there be tiered pricing on Sentinel? And that's probably one I would put to Allie.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. We can't. Yeah, licensing and costing is always the worst questions of all, isn't it? Really,
it's horrific, isn't it? Yeah.
I'll give it a try. I don't sit on the sales side of things, so I try to stick to the technical side of things. But what I can kind of share, I guess, is that you can do capacity reservations. So that would allow you to reserve a fixed amount of daily ingestion capacity for Azure Monitor and Azure Sentinel, and you can kind of set that as a fixed and predictable daily fee. You can upgrade that capacity at any time, but the minimum commitment period for that before you can opt out or reduce your capacity reservation is 31 days. So I can stick a link in the published chat as a reply to that. Hopefully that answers the question a little bit. That's probably about all I can offer on that. I mean, there are.
I think that's all there is to offer on it, Alison. I mean, I've looked at pricing. I've weirdly been asked about it a few times. And yeah, it's just capacity reservations, the same as with any Azure, other type of Azure environment. So yeah, that's the same advice that I would have given as well.
And lastly, I think on that point, as an MSS, as a service provider, it's quite interesting for us because we're able to completely separate the cost of our SOC services from the infrastructure cost. And it's the first time we've been able to do that. And it's great because our model is the customer's going to have an incumbent Microsoft provider. They're going to pay their Microsoft bill in terms of the storage space used for analytics and retention for Sentinel. They're going to pay that to that provider. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to pay it to us. So what you get from us is a price for pure SOC services. It's quite clear what you're paying for from what you're getting from us. But we are able to, we always estimate. We use the Microsoft calculators to tell the customer what their total cost of ownership will probably be. So it's reasonably transparent, but it's great for us because it allows us to say, look, this is what you're getting from us, and this is how much it is, and take all that licensing stuff out of the argument as a service provider.
I think the big benefit of using Sentinel as well is that a lot of the M365 data comes for free. So I was just on a call with a customer earlier, actually talking around. They've got Splunk in, and they're looking to displace that with Sentinel, because they're spending a lot of money on Splunk. And they can make some immediate cost savings, even if they transferred the same connectors and stuff over to Sentinel, just because the M365 data is coming in predominantly free of charge. So I think that's a big bonus for it as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got quite a few questions coming in actually, so I'll move on. So Jeff Bezos, thanks for joining us, Jeff. Obviously, I expected you to be busier than you are, but it's good that you want to find out about the competition. So how does ITC SOC access the client's Sentinel data, and what are the protections around the data? So that's a good question. So we use the Microsoft provides an MSSP model based on a thing called Lighthouse, a service called Lighthouse. So it's the customer's Azure Sentinel instance. It's the customer's security stack. You grant via Sentinel. You grant us role-based access control, and so we use Sentinel to select which customers' security environment we want to pop into and manage, basically. So it remains yours. We teleport into it effectively. We don't transfer any data from you to us. So that's how it works. And then the protections around the data are, Microsoft standard Azure protection. So things like, you can keep it in one country, or in a geography if you wish to, and all that other compliance stuff that Microsoft offer for data going into and out of Azure. It's quite simple, works really well from the Lighthouse point of view. Okay, Steve, so how does Sentinel rate against the leading SIEMs? That's a very good question, one that comes up quite a lot. But Allie, do you want to have a go at that for me?
Sure. So I think the Magic Quadrant came out just recently, the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant, and a lot of partners and a lot of customers were asking us why Azure Sentinel wasn't on the list. Why weren't we on the quadrant? What's our answer to that? And it's a pretty simple answer, actually. Gartner, along with a lot of the other products, only consider products that were GA when they actually did the when they actually do the assessment. So the Magic Quadrant, the Gartner Magic Quadrant, was looking only at products that were GA on July the 31st, 2019, and Azure Sentinel only GA'd at the end of September in 2019. So therefore, that's what the reason that we're not on that, and some of the other ones as well. It'll be the same story for some of those. But Gartner have mentioned Azure Sentinel around market trends. So was kind of called out that notable developments in the market, including the announcement of a preview version, and in August, general availability of Microsoft Azure Sentinel. And the availability of backstory from Alphabet Company Chronicle, which was brought in under Google Cloud. It says, although these SaaS offerings did not meet the deadline date for the inclusion in research, Gartner customers have expressed interest in how they might affect their existing SIEM deployments and their longer-term SIEM plans. I think Microsoft have made a really big hit with that in terms of, being able to go out there and deploy Azure Sentinel in probably about 15 minutes to kind of, create a workspace, set up log analytics, and ingest a couple of connectors. I think we did in a training event once, and we managed to get it done. One connector to Office 365. We timed ourselves, and we kind of had everything all ready to kind of press go and press next. But we did it in 5 minutes just to prove a point, really.
You beat us there, Alison, because we did it live on a webinar as well a few weeks back with Shelley.
Yes.
Who works for you guys now. We did it with her, and she did it, I think it was like 7 minutes. So yeah, it's pretty quick to get set up. It's a lot faster than some of the other SIEMs that are out there, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it really is. And I think that is why, I know we were going to mention it later, but that's the sole reason why we can do for the first time proofs of value with the SIEM as well. Practically impossible to do with any of the other SIEMs we've worked with, because the setup and implementation work is just too onerous and would take too long. But with Sentinel, we're able to turn it on, ingest particularly 365 data. Yeah, you spend an hour or two with our guys on the phone, and then you've got a 30-day POV, which is just, it's remarkable to be able to do it with this stuff. Actually, it's great. Thanks for that. Okay, Ron. Actually, I'll answer PD first, because that's a quick one for me to do. Is ITC only using the Sentinel SIEM? No. No, we're not. We are also an ArcSight house. We have a lot of ArcSight expertise. We've got a lot of intellectual property built on it, and we've got a lot of customers on it, and that will continue. Microsoft is just a different offering with different strengths, but it's absolutely the way we're going forward with what we're calling, I'd hate to use the phrase next gen, but for predominantly cloud-based organizations in particular, we're just finding that the use case works slightly better with Sentinel and the security stack than with traditional SIEMs. Yeah, we also have Logarithm and Splunk customers, so certain customers require certain things, and we'll overlay our services on top of them. But we've certainly had much more interest and uptake with Sentinel than we have with anything else I've seen in recent history. Okay, Ron B is a small business with 50 users. How does this benefit me versus a 10K strong company? Why would anyone come after our data? Amy, do you want to talk about that one? Small business. Is it worth a small business looking at things like Sentinel?
I think it definitely is, yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, the M365 data can come in for free, or majority of it. So why would you not? I think I'd flip the question on the head. Why would you not switch it on? If you can do it for free, and you can kind of get that single pane of glass view, and you can see what's going on in your environment, having that information surely is better than not having that information. I mean, there's some quite interesting statistics out there about small businesses. I think it's something like 45% of them. 45% of cyber attacks hit small businesses, and then it's a ridiculously high number of small businesses that go out of that go out of business if they do get hit with a cyber attack, because obviously you've got the reputational damage that comes with it. You've got the fines that potentially come with it from the ICO. I'm sure it wouldn't be anywhere in the millions like it is with BA or the Marriott or whatever, but I'm sure they're not small fines. And it's just the fact that then you've got to reactively go back and kind of remediate whatever has come out of that cyber attack as well. So I mean, if someone's ransomwared you and you've got no access to any of your data anymore, you've got to start again. So it has quite a bit. It has a big impact, and you know, cyber criminals are not. They're looking for easy targets. So small businesses are often easy targets because they haven't got that. They don't have all the technology with the bells and whistles there because sometimes because of the price. Whereas with this, because it's fairly low cost, so I don't see a reason why you wouldn't go with it.
Yeah, and I think you don't necessarily need to buy a service, he said, as a service provider, because of the sort of ease of access of Sentinel and the manageable costs. You know, your first step could be absolutely just to go and set it up yourself, and it lends itself to that. You know, it's pretty well menu driven, and you start getting some self-explanatory data. So yeah, I think in terms of small business, we've had some customers in the past who've had breaches who are small in terms of the number of people, but is significant in terms of what they do financially and what makes them a target. So like conveyancing solicitors constantly, property conveyancing solicitors constantly have a problem because they move a lot of money about, and they do it mostly on the strength of emails. And there are other examples, investment houses that have hundreds of millions under management, but actually there's only 12 of them, on staff, and nobody looking after IT. So, I think the size of your company doesn't necessarily reflect the risk to your business of cybersecurity. So I think it equally applies. I agree with you, Amy. I think it applies whoever you are, really. Good. So anonymous. Okay. How is a threat managed when ITC/IE are involved? Am I told first, or is it fixed first and then I'm informed? Well, that depends entirely on what type of contract you want. There is an argument to say we get quite a lot of this now, where customers say, look, I don't really want to know about the technicalities. I want you to implement a service which manages my risk. And in that case, we will take an action, maybe an automatic action, to isolate some hosts from the network based on some information that came into SIEM and ran through some playbooks. And then we will inform you. So we'll say, and that actually, a lot of that is automatic now as well. Say, look, this host had this virus. We looked for it on the rest of your network, found it on these other hosts. We've isolated them as well. Here's what you need to go and do to fix it. But equally, some customers do not want that level of autonomy, which I can understand in some industries and some customers. They don't want a service provider having that level of autonomy. So they stipulate within our contract, within our SLAs. We've got SLAs that for every occasion, they stipulate that we will tell them, what we found, and then we will set up incident management and remediate it together. So the answer is it depends entirely on what you want as a customer.
Yeah, and I mean some other stuff can be remediated automatically, can't it, with some of the queries that you can put in as well. So you wouldn't necessarily have if you did choose to go down the route of being informed about when we've done some remediation work, it might not necessarily be for every single little incident, like every phishing email that came through, because we can do things that will automatically remediate some of those threats as well.
Yeah. And there's another one here. So will ITC be looking into threat intelligence? Absolutely. So we already have a threat intel service. We integrate that into our SIEM platform to enrich the data. So indicators compromise that we've pulled from threat intelligence feeds are integrated into our playbooks and into our threat hunting, and we actually provide that as a standalone service as well for intelligence. Don't know if you know the answer, Ali, but it's worth asking the question. So AJ asks, will Sentinel move to GUI-based playbook development capabilities, do you think?
I haven't heard that at the moment on the roadmap, unless you have, Amy. I haven't watched the latest update, I think, which was about a week ago. I've had a few days off. So as far as I'm aware, no. I think if I mean, I guess parts of the playbook and stuff are, so, you've got the KQL language, but you couldn't really do that as a GUI. You're going to have to put some form of text in there. Really, logic apps are you can use part of those as GUIs as well. I don't really know of anything else that we would be looking to do in general, though. Amy, your thoughts?
No, just echo what you've said there, Ali. I've not heard any new developments that are coming so far. So, but we can definitely keep people informed if they want to be. Yeah,
I mean, I would imagine that probably wouldn't be something that would be high on our priority list, because you can do so much more at the back end. But then again, I don't know. You could put a request on user voice and ask and drum up some support, I suppose.
Well, with Microsoft's newfound love for the open source community, maybe they'll allow people to develop their own.
That'd be great. Highly possible.
You never know.
Something for you guys to do jointly together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's answered all the questions that are in the chat there. Yes, that has answered all the questions. So we're a little bit early. We're about 10 minutes early, but unless there are any other questions, I think. Thank you for that, Amy. I think it's just worth saying in closing, I did mention it briefly, that we are together with Microsoft and identity experts able to offer proofs of concept. So not only do you get, and I think it actually is a proof of value, because we will do some technical proof of concept. So say, for example, you have some weird in-house application that produces some strange entries into a syslog, and you want the technical evidence that that can be ingested and provide something meaningful, then that kind of technical proof of concept we will do. But really, it's a proof of value. We're saying, look, for 30 days after we first successfully ingest logs into Sentinel, that's when the clock starts ticking. We'll set it up for you, and for 30 days you can then live and breathe a managed Sentinel instance from us as a team. And so you get to see Sentinel in action, you get to see the reports, you get to see how the integration of playbooks work, if that's what you want to see. But as importantly, you get to see how our managed service performs and whether that's actually a fit for your organization. So we found it works really well, and the setup time is minimal. The overhead on the customer involved in helping us set it up again is minimal, and this is really something that we couldn't do with traditional SIEMs. It's it's really hard to do. So get in touch if you'd like to talk about the options of doing that. It's a proof of value in an old-fashioned way, in that it doesn't cost any money and hopefully proves a lot of value. And we're happy to talk to you and see if we can set something up for you. So just get in touch with any of us if that's something which would be of interest. Ali and Amy, you got anything else to add? If not, we can successfully close, I think.
No, all good from me. I think it's been one of our more interesting discussions, actually. Very much enjoyed it.
Good.
Same for me. I think, yeah, it's been great working with you guys to do this. It's really good, and I think I'd probably call out to all of those of you on the call to get in touch with identity experts and ITC Secure and see how they can help you move things forward on your journey with Azure Sentinel and you know, integrating or building a SOC or kind of having a SOC of, you know, having a SOC managed by them.
That's fantastic. Well, both of you, Allie and Amy, thank you very much. To those people who attended and were listening to us, thank you very much as well. This will be available as a recording, I think, which we'll post in the usual places should you wish to listen to it again. But thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion, so appreciate your attendance. Thank you.